Welcome back, Rugby fans, to Rugby411. As always, I'm your host. My name is Joshua Shibata, and welcome back to my MLR videos previewing year number 8 of Major League Rugby, the 2025 season. Of course, this is the Western Conference Part 2 preview. Part 1, I previewed the two teams that finished in the bottom of the conference, who I called the outsiders that are looking in. This is now the top 3 finishing teams from last season in the Western Conference, and ones that I consider the contenders to possibly make it to the MLR Championship. Of course, the competition in the Western Conference is a little bit kind of smaller because there's only 5 teams. Unfortunately, the Dallas Jackals had to bow out coming into year number 8. So only 5 teams in the Western Conference, which means because 4 teams go into the playoff system, only 1 team is kind of out of luck when it comes to the Western Conference. So the competition is a little bit easier. I don't feel there's going to be a lot of change, maybe, because of just who's in the conference. But, what's going to be really questionable is which of these 3 teams might make it into that Major League Rugby Championship final. I don't think it's too far-fetched to figure out which teams make it to the playoffs, which, of course, I'm going to do a video of my way too early predictions on how teams are going to be finishing, which everybody loves to watch because history has proven I've been kind of wrong on that. But the team that makes it to the very end, that will be the really interesting question to answer. So let's get to it. Let's start picking apart these teams. So let's start with the San Diego Legion, who finished 3rd place in the Western Conference last season, 11-5, 55 points. In the postseason, they lost to Seattle, unfortunately, which is kind of a running theme with their history. They lost to them in the Western Conference semifinal. San Diego Legion going to see some changes, not only in the coaching staff, but actually kind of going back to where they first started. They're going to be playing back in Torero Stadium, where they first started a couple years ago before they moved to Snapdragon Stadium. Don't know why they moved out of Snapdragon Stadium. It's quite possible that a lot of teams are starting to kind of downsize a little bit. When it comes to size of stadium, Snapdragon Stadium was a huge venue. I think it held about 10 to 15,000. Torero Stadium only holds 6, so quite a bit of a downgrade. But it is what it is. LA's done the same thing, moving from Dignity Health Sports Park to the Wallace Annenberg Stadium on UCLA campus. Also, a big change for San Diego is coaching staff. Danny Lee, after 3 years, is out of San Diego. In comes John Minetti. John Minetti, if you're not familiar, he is the former Australian Sevens coach. From 2021 to 2024, he coached the Australian Sevens team to a HSBC championship, the only Australian championship for Rugby Sevens. Also from 2018 to 2021, he coached the women's to a championship as well. So no stranger to championships with at least the Rugby Sevens scene, coming into San Diego, hopefully to bring a championship, something that San Diego has been missing so far in their Major League Rugby tenure. Interesting to note is the fact that John Minetti, an Australian coach, the coaching staff now with the RFCLA, predominantly Australian as well. It'll be kind of interesting to see if there's any kind of dynamic where a lot of the players for the RFCLA squad are Australian players coming in. A lot of young Australian players coming in because of their connection with the coaching staff. I wonder if John Minetti will also do the same thing, bringing in Australian players to San Diego, and if maybe those two teams, not only is the rivalry intense between LA and San Diego to begin with, if the rivalry is now going to be even more intense because they're all fighting for the same young Australian players to come over to Major League Rugby. Now, with that being said, again, not a lot of changes. San Diego's a team that didn't really change too much of their roster. They did lose a lot of players. Unfortunately, a lot of them kind of the older players. So you have like Chris Matina, talented fullback, capped Eagle. He retired. Another Eagle that announced his retirement, Greg Peterson, former USA captain, great, phenomenal player. Danny Christensen also announced his retirement. So a lot of players retiring. Matt Giteau, phenomenal Australian player, former LA Guiltinis, capped Wallaby. He didn't announce his retirement, though he announced his retirement a couple years ago when he left the Guiltinis. But don't know if he's not on the team because again, it's one of those things where it hasn't been confirmed yet on the squad. Also, to Mikey Teo, talented Eagles, has not been announced if he is on or off the squad. I know from my experience working with the Rugby 10's tournament system, the Rugby 10's championship over the summer, Mikey Teo is working as a coach for the San Diego squad. So I don't know if he's transitioned to a coaching position rather than a player, but we don't know exactly his status. People that are coming into San Diego, they're bringing in Tavita Lopetti, a very talented winger from Seattle. He was the 2022 Rookie of the Year for Major League Rugby. He is a capped Eagle. He was also the number 3 overall pick during the 2021 draft, so a very young, talented, dynamic player. A couple of other young, dynamic players that are coming in. James Rivers, formerly of Anthem Carolina Rugby block that played for them, and then Stephen Crimp as well, a fullback. He was on the USA under-20s team before, unfortunately. I don't know if that team's still is still running because unfortunately they just announced that the World Cup for the under-20s has been discontinued. So not really a lot for the under-20s program to work for, but Stephen Crimp was a member of that. Forgot to mention that James Rivers was the first-round pick in the 2023 draft by San Diego. He was sent over to Carolina Anthem when that team was made as a loaner, and then is now back with San Diego. The rest of the roster pretty much looks like what they were last season. Vila Helu, a capped Eagles hooker, is back. Lincoln McClutchy, very, very talented, phenomenal fly half, scored 87 points. He was a top scorer for San Diego last season. 5th point scorer in Major League Rugby. Phenomenal player. He really came in, especially with Matt Giteau suffering some injuries throughout the season. Lincoln McClutchy literally came into the clutch for San Diego. Tion Lutz scored 6 tries for San Diego, the most for that team. Connor Tupai is also another talented scrum half. 5 tries for him. Marcel Brackey is back. He is a capped Eagle. Ryan James, phenomenal fast winger, is back. The big question is, what is the status of Ma Nanu? Very talented, former All Blacks, phenomenal player. Kind of near the twilight of his career, arguably. Though, if you saw my interview with Jason Emery, Ma Nanu has at least a couple years left in him, and Jason Emery, of course, has a lot more years left in him as well. Ewok, I know you're watching this, but again, you know, San Diego has a phenomenal backline. Marcel Brackey, Lutz, now adding Lopetti, you're bringing back in Thomas Aoke and Ryan James. I mean, they are a team to be reckoned with. It's just not a lot of changes in the squad. And again, I mean, granted, they finished 3rd, only a few points away from 2nd. They're 2 points behind. They won the same amount of games as Seattle. Seattle, of course, had a couple of extra bonus points. So, you know, they're a very competitive squad. They kind of took the attitude, I feel, of not really changing too much, because if it ain't broke, why fix it? While on the other hand, we go to Seattle, where even though that team was just a game short of winning their 3rd and unprecedented Major League Rugby Shield, they've done quite a bit of change in this team. So let's start talking about the Seattle Seawolves. Finished 2nd place in the Western Conference, 11-5 record, 57 points though. But the difference is they made it all the way to the MLR Championship Final, just coming up short, losing to New England after taking out the Legion in the semifinal Western Conference round and taking out Dallas in the Western Conference Final. Seattle proving themselves to be the pedigree of the Major League Rugby organization. The one of 2 teams now to have won 2 MLR championships. Now New England can claim the other team to have done that, but Seattle still is one of the top pedigree teams. And again, you look at the team, and they've done quite a bit of changes. So pickups, let's start with that. CeCe Mahoney from Houston is now on the team. Diwal Kotze, if you don't know him, from Dallas. They picked up a lot of Dallas players. Unfortunately, again, the Dallas Jackals was forced to fold. So during their dispersal draft, where they put all their players out, they picked up Diwal Kotze, who is a talented hooker. 11 tries scored last year, and in one game, he scored 5 of those tries. It was a phenomenal record done by Diwal Kotze. Brock Gallagher, a very talented Canadian player, picked up from the Dallas dispersal draft as well. And then Juan Pablo Zeiss, a very talented prop from Dallas, also picked up for the team. So they picked up some phenomenal talent there. Also then Mika Kruse, very dynamic center from Utah. And then Malachi Isdale from the USA Sevens program. Again, another really, really talented player. So, but the thing about Seattle, even though they've picked up all of that talent, the one issue that I have looking at this team is who they lost. So unfortunately, Mac Mason, the very talented fly half, top point scorer of last season in all of Major League Rugby with 155 points, unfortunately is not coming back this year for Seattle. Did some research and just found out that actually it sounds like he might be retiring. Mac Mason went back to his home country of Australia. He did a phenomenal interview. If you could find the article, I might post a link in the description. It's a really revealing article on his mindset and his thoughts about his career with rugby, because he started in Australia, of course, with Super Rugby, and it also kind of reveals a lot with the Australian rugby system in general for them that want to become Wallabies with the Australian national team. Yeah, it just sounds like he might be hanging up the boots. So that's a huge loss. That's a huge loss. I don't know. Now, granted, Rodney Iona, I have to say, was signed to Seattle from NOLA Gold, talented fly half, coming in to replace, in a sense, Mac Mason. Rodney Iona, I feel, hasn't been able to show his true potential on the NOLA Gold team. He kind of was playing behind Reese Botha, who is also a very talented fly half. Most of the time, Reese was the one starting. Rodney kind of played cleanup. So this is his chance to shine. But man, I mean, it's a talented guy like Mac Mason that I don't know if you can really replace him. But again, I've seen this situation before with a team called the New England Free Jacks, where they lost a player named Bodine Waka, who, if you weren't following rugby at the Major League Rugby at the time, Bodine Waka was one of the top point scorers in all of Major League Rugby. In 2022, New England that year came up short of winning or making it to the MLR Shield. They think they lost in the first round of the playoffs, and he then left the team. And as soon as that was announced, I thought New England was done. Like, the next season, 2023, they weren't going to do anything without Bodine Waka. But then in comes a guy named Jason Patros, and as you know, that was pretty much it. And New England wins not only one shield, but back-to-back shields, pretty much behind Jason Patros. So it's not like this hasn't happened before. Is Rodney Iona going to be the solution for Seattle as the new Jason Patros? I don't know about that, but maybe Seattle doesn't take as big as a step back as one would think. A couple of other people that unfortunately Seattle has lost: Big Joey Taufuete, a capped Eagles. He's going to NOLA. Tavita Lopere, as I mentioned before, is going over to their rival San Diego. And then, interestingly enough, Connor Mooneyham, first round draft pick in the 2020 draft, going over to Anthem, Carolina. So, that's actually, I feel, a pretty big loss for Seattle as well. But again, talking about who's coming back, re-signing Chance Wingluski, very talented Eagle prop. Of course, Pago Haini, super talented, number 8, as well as a very cool dude off and on and off the pitch. And of course, Rickard Hadding, one of the top try scorers in all of Major League Rugby, 42 tries in his career in Major League Rugby, second only to, of course, the Butcher, Dylan Fawcett. You're also bringing back a very talented scrum half in J.P. Smith, Ioneo Fudi, talented winger, 22 tries in his career, and then Jade Stidling, very, very talented South African winger, 10 tries for Seattle last year, the most tries by a Seawolf. So again, a very talented squad of Seattle coming back. They were just a game short of winning the MLR Shield. I think losing Mac Mason is kind of huge. San Diego really didn't do much. I'm going to start previewing Houston, and you might going to see the same thing with San Diego. Seattle maybe still might have enough to repeat, making it back into the MLR Championship game, but we'll see. Now let's talk about Houston. Houston Sabercats finished first in the Western Conference. They were the surprise on the Western side, I feel. Houston was always that team that looked really, really good on paper, and yet prior seasons always seemed to fall apart. This last season, they were pretty unstoppable, finishing 14-2, 67 points, best record in the league, in the entire league last season. Unfortunately, once they got into the playoffs, though, they kind of fell apart. They did fall apart. Lost to Dallas Jackals in the first round in the semifinals of the Western Conference. A huge upset. That is as close as Houston has gotten so far in their Major League franchise existence. Of course, they're coming back with Human Pote as their coach once again. Not Pote Human as their coach once again. He's been coaching since 2022. Not a lot of changes for Houston, similar to San Diego. They lost a couple players, some key players. CeCe Mahoney, as I mentioned, going to Seattle. Christian Dyer, as I mentioned in the prior video, going to LA. Carlos Nushian, talented scrum half, going to Anthem, Carolina. The one pickup that they did make is Juan D. Oliver during the Dallas Dispersal draft. Very talented scrum half. I think that's a big pickup, good pickup for them. A good replacement for Carlos Nushian. But pretty much the rest of the Houston team is coming back. So again, it seems very much like the San Diego theory. If it ain't broke, why fix it? You're bringing back Davy Coetzee, who's always been a talented fly half, 76 points, 5 tries, one of the top point scorers in the league. You're also bringing back AJ Alatimu. You have that combo of Davy Coetzee, AJ Alatimu. There's no better duo of fly halves than those two. AJ had 78 points, just a little bit above David Coetzee. But again, those two players, they are the big reason why I feel Houston was so successful. And if one of them is hurt, the other takes the place. If one of them is tired, the other one comes in. It is a dynamic duo, better than Batman and Robin in this Major League Rugby franchise. And then, of course, you're bringing back Jeremy the Missile Missalegu, 4 tries last season. Very young, super talented, built like a tank. Seth the Viking Smith comes back, youngest player in Major League Rugby history to score a try last season. He's coming back. Emmanuel Albert, the 2021 second overall draft pick in the draft, as well as the 2021 Rudy Schultz winner, which is basically the Heisman Trophy equivalent for rugby in the college system. He's coming back. Andre Warner, 7 tries, another talented scrum half, and then Roman Murphy coming back as well. So, again, with these top 3, you have 2 teams who really didn't make a lot of changes. One finished first. One of them finished a very close third, but almost second place. Seawolves, though, they made it to the championship game, and yet they made a lot of changes. But again, the Mac Mason, it's going to be interesting to see how much of a difference that's going to make. And if Rodney Iona, like I said, can really step up and make that replacement to fill that void, because it's a huge void. So I'm not going to predict anything just yet. I'm waiting for, of course, my big, way too early predictions for the season video. But right now, it's going to be very interesting to see where these 3 teams place. And then, of course, if you saw my other video, RFCLA has made so many improvements, I feel. Out of the 5 teams of the Western Conference, by far, RFCLA has made the most improvement in the offseason, at least on paper. So, will RFCLA do enough to challenge these 3 teams? Again, I feel, with the exception of Utah, you see the 3 teams, and then RFCLA, that's 4. Those are the 4 teams that are going to the playoffs. I'll admit to that right now. But which of those 4 make it to the MLR Championship? That's the big question. And it's going to be interesting to figure it out and find out as we go through season number 8 2025 season of Major League Rugby. And again, I'm excited to be there, and I'm excited for you guys to join and watch. Again, I'll let you guys know about the situation with the Super Brew. If you don't know what I'm talking about, watch part 1 video on the Western Conference to talk about Super Brew. And that's pretty much it. So again, thank you very much for watching my video. Again, let me know what you think of the new setup. If there's anything I need to change about it, I got a nice stand. Hopefully I don't knock down my my board. I got a nice stand, got a new background. I mean, everything a little bit more professional. Got a little mic I forgot to mention about before. So trying my best to be a little bit more professional as we go into, good grief, what is this, year 4 of Rugby411? So yeah, so I'm pretty excited about it as well. So thank you very much for watching my video, and I'll see you on the pitch.